Now back to the show that informs you and discusses the issues. Front Page Jacksonville on Hot 106.5.
We are indeed the show that discusses issues, and if there is an issue that you'd like to discuss, the number to call is 833-758-1065. That's 833-758-1065. So for years, we've heard about this thing called the American Dream. And a part of that American dream is to own a home with a nice picket fence. Maybe you want a dog, nice car, kids. Oh, it would be so beautiful. Well, our guest today is going to talk with us a little bit about a portion of that American dream, which is home ownership. Her name is Kiara Reeves. She's a real estate agent with Momentum Realty. Kiara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Octavius. I'm really glad to be here. Like you said, home ownership is definitely the American dream. A lot of people somehow forget that they're entitled to that American dream, and it's a lot of things that go into that, but it's overall such a wonderful process.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because for some people, they may say, okay, well, I can't afford that portion of the American dream. So today's economy, with inflation, with the cost of living being the way that it is, we just saw a major hurricane tear up a lot of homes in the Gulf of Florida. So let's talk a little bit about how home ownership can become obtainable, especially within the African American community. So for someone who wants to own a home but may not believe that they can afford it, what's one of the first things they should consider?
One of the first things they should consider is something that I see often, and that's counting themselves out before even speaking to a professional. People say a lot of times, like, hey, well, my credit isn't good, or I have these debts, or let me pay down this collection first prior to checking with a lender. And a lot of times the collections may not even need to be paid off, or there's certain things that you would do to your credit as a consumer that a professional wouldn't even recommend that you do. So there's so many things that a professional can just go over your credit and look at specifically what your situation is, and then tell you, hey, this is the steps that you need to take in order to become a homeowner.
All right, so I'm gonna be transparent. It's okay if I be transparent with you.
Look, I love transparency.
All right, so my wife and I, we just purchased our first home together in 2021, and I'm sharing this because there's something that I saw on your Facebook page a couple of weeks back, and I was like, I'm gonna save this little tidbit for the show. We didn't use a realtor. We went right to the little builder in our community and said, hey, look, we want to buy a house. All right, how much we got to put down? All right, we'll put that money down. We want to buy a house. But I remember I think your post said something along the lines of, that's actually not in the best interest of the buyer.
Yes. That is one of those things where you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
So if you go into a builder's office, you see these lovely new construction homes.
Because it was gorgeous. Yes, it was.
Yes, there's nothing they don't have to really sell you that home. The home sells itself. You just kind of walk in, you see the features, and the model home is going to have all the high-end finishes. You're going in like, ooh, and
yes. Right.
Everything is catching your eye. They have the home stage so that you can, see what it would be like to live in with all the furniture. And you're sold right then. So why would you want to go get a realtor if that's going to add another step? However, for me, I did the same thing. Back in 2019, my husband and I purchased our first home, and we utilized a realtor because we were moving from Virginia to Florida. So we didn't know the area. There was a lot of things that we just felt like we couldn't do on our own.
Sure.
So having a realtor really helped keep up the communication during the process. We got check-ins, and it was just, I feel like having a realtor adds that barrier of protection to you. So when it comes to new construction, There's a lot of things I feel like I didn't get specifically for my particular transaction. And it's not to say my realtor was a bad realtor, but
Sure.
there were things that she didn't know. Whereas if you have a realtor that kind of knows what they're doing, or they have a little bit more experience in that area, something such as blinds or hardware on your cabinets, like everything is negotiable during that process. And we, people like us, don't know that if you've never done it before. So
Learn from Kiara and I. Don't go to the new build without a realtor. They're your safety net, right? So I'm glad to know that we aren't the only ones that did that. And so that's pretty common because, as you mentioned, we went, and I'll go a little bit deeper with the transparency. We didn't even walk through the model home that we actually bought. We was like, no, we'll get that one. Yeah, that one looks good. We'll go with that one. So you mentioned tip number 1, don't count yourself out before speaking with a professional. Tip number 2, if you do want to get a new build, go with the realtor because they're going to advocate on your behalf. For someone like, this credit score thing, this money, my money a little light. All right. So for someone who realistically may need to take some time before actually buying because they may not have the financial means, are there financial options available to families to help them close that money gap?
I'm so glad you asked. So at these builders specifically, like you were saying, another thing that people don't realize is most of them offer closing costs, and they will offer down payment assistance depending on which preferred lenders that they partner with. So a lot of them, they'll have maybe a list of lenders that they deal with specifically, or they may even let you bring your own lender. Like I know, they're not paying me for this. Ameris Bank is one of those lenders in this area. They have a map full of the different zip codes, and you can type in the address on their site. It's called Ameris Choice. You can use it for down payment assistance, closing costs, and you can be a first-time home buyer. So,
wow.
And a lot of people don't know that you qualify as a first-time home buyer every 3 years from your purchase. So let's say you purchased back in 2020. You would qualify to use that grant again. And I did say grant, meaning you don't have to pay it back.
Free money.
Wow.
Free money. Yeah, so Wanda in the background. Wanda's our amen corner today, listener, in case you're wondering. If you have questions for Kiara, 833-758-1065. That's 833-758-1065 is the number to call. So let's look at it from a different perspective, because staying in the realm of transparency, I wasn't necessarily sold on owning a home. Right. If I were a single man, I would be in an apartment right now with an air mattress, 80-inch screen TV, right?
And no couch.
The necessities of life. I can get some milk crates. I don't need no couch. Right? And that's probably what my apartment looked like when I used to live in Tallahassee. And here's why, though, because for me, I looked at home ownership as, I'm going to call it a scam, because to me, it made sense for real estate investors who were investing in it. But when I looked across the landscape, I was like, I don't know anyone in my life who's ever bought a home, who's actually ever paid out that loan and they actually own it. So for someone who may be skeptical about owning a home, I loan a home. I don't feel like I own a home. I'm a home loaner.
And that's so funny you say that, because my parents actually owned a home when I was a kid, but I still had no clue what I was doing. And so I know so many things have changed since 1992. However, in this time and age, you got to think about what you pay for rent and who owns that property, what they actually pay for the mortgage. You're paying a mortgage, you're just not paying your mortgage.
Yeah.
So all the things that it takes to maintain that home, you can pay other people to do it. It's not to say that you have to go out there and trim your lawn and take care of the maintenance and change out your AC. Everybody thinks, owning a home is all these responsibilities, but you're essentially paying for those costs to maintain the home when you rent the home.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense if you can build equity And no landlord is going to say, hey, I'm going to give you a check for $100,000 back once you leave. They're going to be taking your security deposit if you put holes in it, or you painted it a color they don't like, or you did something to the house that they don't like. They're taking your check. However, if you own a home, you built equity, however much time you own the property, you can leave with a check in your hand. And who knows how much that check may be, but it's better than zero.
Yeah.
So,
and you mentioned equity twice. So share with the listener very quickly what equity is and how can it be obtained.
Okay, so equity, I'll put it into perspective how I found out equity was. I honestly thought equity was a scam because during COVID, so I bought my house in 2019, and, COVID came early 2020. Yep. So all of a sudden, the price of homes, their value increased like tremendously. So I got a ton of letters in the mail, and they're like, your equity is this, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, equity? How do you know that? How do you know what my equity is? And little did I know, you got property appraisers, stuff like that. But I'm like, equity, okay, let me start doing some research. So I got an appraiser out to our house, and I had at least $100,000 in equity in just a year and a half. And I was like, wait a minute, this is my money.
Right.
$150,000 in equity, that is my money, and I can take that out. I can make upgrades to my house. I can use it for debt. I can use it for anything that I want.
And you don't have to pay it back.
I don't have to pay it back.
There you go.
So after that, I was like, wow, I love my house.
How can I get more equity? Equity for everyone.
So yes, equity is definitely an amazing thing.
And one other quick question, because you mentioned you purchased in 2019. We purchased ours in 2021. Our interest rate on our home, I think, was 3.1% when we purchased. And if I'm not mistaken, the interest rate today is 5.7%.
Yes, and I was just having a conversation with a woman the other day. She purchased in 1985.
Wow.
And she was telling me about her and her husband and the different upgrades he did to their home. And she was like, we were really excited because around that time frame, Reagan was in office, and I think interest rates were 17%.
What?
And she said people were freaking out, but they still were buying a house because you need a house to live in.
Sure.
You need a place to live regardless if you're buying or selling it, so why not buy it? So if she paid for her house back then, I think she said $30,000 for her house, and her mortgage was maybe $350.
I wish.
And we say we wish, but that was at 10% back then.
Okay, well, let me say that. I wish those rates back then with what I'm making now. Because I would live gloriously. So we want to make certain that we don't count ourselves out on the front end without speaking with the professional with purchasing a home. If you do the new build thing, speak with the realtor, right? Don't just go all willy-nilly by yourself.
Please don't go by yourself.
Right? Take someone with you who understands the lingo and how to fight for your best interest. Equity is good.
Equity is not a scam.
Right.
Don't be like me.
Equity is good. Interest rates. Should interest rates determine whether a person buys or not?
Honestly, if you need a place to live, I don't think it should determine that, because if you look back, like I said, in COVID, people were going into a frenzy. When you have the demand rise, that means the price is going to rise. People see, oh, well, we got all these people coming into the market to buy. Well, we can increase the price.
Sure.
Well, the interest rate is low. Of course, people are looking at the interest rate to be that attractive thing. But when the price rises, you don't get that same benefit as to where you would have bought at, standard pricing and higher interest rates. A lot of people don't realize you can refinance your loan. And granted, that starts it over for 30 years, but everybody is paying on a mortgage somewhere or another unless you paid it off. So it's not harm in you refinancing your loan for that 2% interest rate. And then if you want to pay towards the principal, you can. If you have a lower mortgage, nobody's stopping you from paying more on your mortgage.
And one final question for you, Kiara, before we wrap up, because here with our listening audience predominantly being African American, how can home ownership help the African American community in terms of being able to better leverage or to better level the playing field when you speak about wealth building?
So far as wealth building, I feel like home ownership is really important to the African American community because it just broadens your mind and it helps you see that there's more to life than just being in a cycle of other people owning and having control. And once you have control over your own assets, it makes you feel proud and you value things a little bit more. You take pride into your things. Like, you know how it is when you cut your grass and you go back outside and you kind of look at it like, wow, this is my house. I love my house. I painted it this color. Like, you know, it's just the simple things, and building wealth comes with that. When it comes to home ownership, you don't have to overthink it. You don't have to feel like, oh my gosh, all this money or whatever. Like, I feel like speaking to a professional can really clear up those things for you and those fears.
So someone who's listening right now who may say, all right, Kiara, I hear what you're saying. I want some of that equity. How can I get some of that equity that you're speaking about? How can they get in contact with you if they'd like to speak with you more?
So the best way to get in contact with me, follow me at Open Doors with Key on Instagram, or you can find me on Facebook at Kiara Reeves at Momentum Realty. And also, if you want to call me, text me, 904-629-7123, and we can schedule a consultation, and I will, send you my free home buying guide. This will walk you through the steps A to Z of how you can purchase a home, and it's really not that hard, you guys. I can help you with the process, and I can put you in contact with my preferred lenders that will get you this free money. So
free money. That sounds like an oxymoron, but it's a legit thing. Free money.
It's not too good to be true. There's multiple lenders out here with different incentives. You just have to talk to them. So
Kiara Reeves with Momentum Realty. Reach out to her if you're interested in home ownership. Kiara, thank you so much for hanging out with us today on Front Page Jacksonville.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
It's been fun.
Coming up in just a moment, we're going to talk to the first African-American woman-owned selfie room showcase museum in the state of Florida, and she's a pretty dope photographer too. I'm talking about the one and only Carissa Glanton. She'll be joining us in just a moment on Front Page Jacksonville.
Front Page Jacksonville resumes on Hot 106.5.